Good evening everyone, it is Christine here and I'm back for another episode of our Stitch Along. So thanks again to everyone that is stitching with us, and we're continuing to work on blanket stitch, and we'll be doing detached blanket stitch first, and then I'm thinking we'll have time to fit in twisted detached blanket stitch, which actually uses the technique we'll be using for blanket stitch but then switches to something a bit different for the second half of the stitch. Now I'm thinking I will add the attached blanket stitch on this side and the twisted detached on the other side, and I'm going to have a go using this yarn that I got secondhand, and I believe it's for punch needle work, so it feels almost like a wool, but I think it's a synthetic. It's quite a beautiful bright yellow, reminds me a bit of bumblebees. So we will give that one a go. And what we're going to be doing to start is creating a straight line, which will be sort of the foundation for the stitch. So let's just tie a knot in my thread. Let's get a proper sort of pull down on the thread so it's not too long. It's always hard working out how much thread I'm going to need so I don't have to rethread. So I'm going to pop through a bit out from where my letters are. I'm going to do a long stroke. Try and keep it approximately even between the two lots of lines. I'm sort of using the lines in the fabric as my guide, but you can do these whatever stitch. So I've done a stitch coming up here and going down there. So if we called that A to B, and then I'm going to come back at A through the same hole if I can without skewering. It's always good to try not to skewer your knot, because sometimes then your thread will get caught in the knot and you'll have all sorts of problems. And then I'm going to go back down through spot B. So essentially you've now got a double width bit of thread there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle to the front at point A, so where we started, and we're going to do that just below point A. So I won't come through the same hole, I'm just going to come a smidge below. And then I'm going to take the needle from the top to the bottom behind, but I'm not piercing the fabric and I'm not piercing my thread. I'm placing it behind the yarn. And then I'm going to position the thread underneath the needle, so it's forming a loop underneath the needle. And so I'm then going to begin to pull the thread through. So I'm going to hold on to that loop, I think, and I'm going to pull it through, and you want it until it wraps tightly around the foundation. And so I'm then going to just keep repeating that, so coming through from the top, putting my loop underneath it, and then pulling it through towards me so it wraps around right next to where the previous stitch was. So I'm just creating that loop and then pulling it through and pulling it towards me, so it's just wrapping the foundation piece. So always making sure the thread is under the tip of the needle, and then pulling it through. So you're not actually piercing the fabric. This is all just happening around that foundation piece of thread. So it's really just like kind of tying knots along that foundation. So always making sure your thread is underneath, pulling your needle through, pulling it towards the end where you are, making sure it's not overlapping the previous stitch, just letting it come down next to where the other stitch was. I'm just going to let my sort of thread spin around a bit, just so if it's getting some tension in the thread, some twistiness, that doesn't become an issue. So just pulling it back so it positions just next to the previous stitch. I feel like I have to guide it, but I think it's actually pretty good about just ending up where it needs to end up. I was worried this thread might be a bit too bulky, but I think it's actually okay. So just continuing to make sure you've got that loop underneath. It does seem to be pulling a bit from the back, but I think it's okay. Just making a little bit of a hole as I pull it where the threads come through, but I don't think that will be a problem. I guess it's with these sorts of woven fabrics, and it's a nice a relatively thin cotton as well, so it does have that natural inclination to create little pools. You can always do a French knot like we did last night at the end to finish our pinwheel. So again, just bringing it under, making sure the thread is looped under the needle, and just creating that little detached blanket stitch. I think we're there. So it says keep going until you get to the end, and then at the end, so you need it fully covered. I don't think there's anything else we can cover with it. Then we're going to take the needle to the back of the fabric just below the end of the straight stitches. So just like we came through at the front, just below, we're going to go just below at the end, like that. There we go. So that is our, looks like a banana. That's our banana stitch. No, it's our detached blanket stitch. Sorry, I laughed and took the thing off camera. It's really lovely. Just creates a little covered thread with that nice little detailing on it. So there we go. That is that one, and now we will move on. I'm just going to tie it off at the back. Hopefully not to make a big loop like I sometimes do when I'm trying to tie something off. I'll just do a second one because I'm not quite sure how this, I think this thread won't be one of those ones that sort of tries to undo itself, but to be sure. There we go. So let's do one here. I'll use the same yellow, I think, just for a bit of symmetry. And we'll see what a twisty banana looks like. So I hope you're all having a great day or a great evening, whatever the case may be for you. Where will I position it? The other one was past the end, maybe about there. Just following the weave in the pattern. I think that's about, oops, pulled it out with a dry bit of skin on my finger. I can see where I was trying to angle it through. Okay, so we'll go around this way again. So we're again going to, although I've done it the opposite direction this time. Is that, okay, we'll go this way just so that I don't confuse things. So that's our A, but that's our B point. and then I'm going to come out just below our A starting point. And so we're going to do exactly the same thing for half of the length of our thread, our foundation piece. So coming under, making sure the thread is under the needle, and then pulling it through and making that little notch. And just we keep doing that for half the length. This is our first stitch where we're not actually working it through the fabric, apart from those first two foundation stitches. I'm loving all the chat we've been having in the live chat, the premiere chat, where people are watching it, the playing of the video in live time, and just hearing about how people approach different stitches and the techniques they use. It was fascinating on the back stitch to discover that the version of back stitch that I've been doing all these years, which I thought was the traditional back stitch, is actually a second variation of back stitch, but one that's, I think, particularly suited to slow stitch styles. So you might have thought, nah, back stitch, I know that, I don't need to watch that video, which you may know both techniques, but yeah, in the video I share the one in the book, and then I share my technique, which also some of the others in the group said they use that one too. For a while there I was thinking I was a bit abnormal. Nothing wrong with being abnormal though, I say. Nothing at all. So I reckon we've actually probably gone slightly further than the halfway mark, but I'm not going to let that worry me. So what we're going to now do is we're going to take the needle from the top to the bottom behind the foundation, and now we're going to loop the thread underneath. We're going to start to pull the thread towards us until it begins to close around the foundation. So probably to that point. Then we're going to take the thread up and away from us and pull in that direction until it wraps snugly around. And so we're going to keep doing that. So taking it through, putting the thread under, pulling it through while it's still down pointing to us, and then once it's at that point we're going to pull it upwards. So again, so the same stitch as before to the point that we get it close to forming around, and then we're going to pull it upwards. And again. Pull upwards. And then pull upwards. And then pulling upwards. Upwards. Oops, down. And through. Take it to that point and then pull it upwards for its final tightening. Down and through. And then pull upwards. And we might try one more. So what you get is this really interesting little twist that happens. So it becomes quite three-dimensional, like a little swirl. Be interesting to see how that goes if you do it over a larger sort of a distance. But I like that. I like that effect a lot. So that is our detached blanket stitch, Aka the banana. and our twisted detached blanket stitch, and I'm not quite sure what that looks like. Thinking it's sort of a double helix, but not really, but it's sort of got that twisty vibe to it. So I hope you enjoyed watching that, and thanks again for coming along on the stitchy journey. And in terms of what we'll be doing tomorrow, a little taster. Our next one is blanket stitch long and short. So it's similar to the basic blanket stitch, but we're going to be, it will go up and down, and there's a scalloped variation of it as well. So I think I'll do both variations underneath here. And then after that, the next day, we'll be doing another looped form. So I think I might plan to have that one down here. And then finally, we'll be doing an actual scalloped blanket stitch. And I'm thinking I might do a scalloping under here, just in case you're wanting to plan out your piece as well. But feel free to do it whatever way you like. So take care, folks, and I will chat to you soon. Bye, everyone.